Hello, welcome back. We're going to continue today talking about the strategic planning process. We looked before at what the purpose was. Last time we looked at the actual process and what we try to accomplish at each of the different levels. But one thing that we mentioned twice during that process was looking at our situation, analyzing what's going on internally and externally. What we're going to do in this segment is explore that in more detail. What are we looking for and how do we go about doing that? And that's what we call analyzing the environment. First of all, we are going to do an internal look at our environment, our business environment, and that's looking at our own company. As we've mentioned, this means looking at our corporate resources, and we want to do so honestly. One example is our human resources. Every organization I'm aware of always talks about how good their human resources are. They have a great labor force, wonderful workers. If everybody had such great workers, would business have trouble? Would businesses run into the challenges they do? I think sometimes we tend not to make honest assessments. So in looking at our corporate resources, we want to be very honest. Where are our strengths? Maybe our human resources are very strong in the technology field and a little bit weak in communications. Therefore, that's what we would want to concentrate on, strengthening our position there. Okay. We want to understand what we do well, what our strengths are. If you think back to we talked about the SWOT analysis, the corporate competencies, what we do well are going to be our strengths. And we need to know what our weaknesses are. What don't we do well? The list of examples for competencies or strengths and weaknesses, is very long. And for one company, what's their strengths could be another company's weaknesses. Some examples of things we'd look for that I haven't already mentioned: brand loyalty, patents held, technological base, our research capabilities, number of locations. Those are all things that could either be a competency or strength or a weakness for a different corporation. We also need to look at our corporate culture, especially if we're recommending making some changes in our organization. How likely are those changes going to be to get through? It's very hard to change a corporate culture, so we've got to do an honest assessment of where we are with that. Some of the things we would look at in that assessment: is the culture one of risk-taking? Are they willing to go out beyond what they already know and take a risk, take a gamble? And also, is this more of a profit-centered organization or a people-centered organization? The reason it's important to understand the difference between the two and decide which one your organization is because it'll tell you what kind of decisions they're willing to make. If they're more people-centered, their decisions are going to be ones that are usually better for society but maybe don't generate quite as much profit. Hopefully, any organization you're involved with is going to value both, their people and their profit, and try and find a way of maximizing both. Okay, so that's a brief look at our internal environment. What we're going to concentrate on, though, is our external environment, and we call that scanning. When we're looking through the different environments, trying to find trends that may affect us. You see listed here a list of the 5 trends that we're going to talk about here briefly. I'm going to give you the type of trends that we're looking for. The trends that are currently going on are ones that you would have to come up with on your own. So let's get started. First one I had listed there was an economic environment. And in the economic environment, we're going to look at a number of things, but one that's very important to look at is our business cycle. Where is our economy right now? And we tend to go through 4 different stages in our business cycles, as I listed up here. Your book goes through and defines each of those, so I'm not going to. But what I want to tell you for each of these is what marketing should be thinking about and what marketing should be trying to do during these time periods. If our economy is going through a time of recession, it means people are a little bit worried. They're scared about what the future holds. And so for most people, their income doesn't change. For most people, their income is all right. It's safe, but they're not sure about it. So they are going to still spend the money, but very cautiously. From a marketing standpoint, what this means is we want to promote the value of our product. that they're getting more than their money's worth, that it's a good investment. Ethically, we don't want to make any false claims, but they're usually willing to spend the money if they feel it is a good expenditure. During a time of recovery, people have been scared about the future. They've been scared about their income, and they're just starting to feel a little bit good, a little more confident, and so they want to reward themselves a little bit. What's really popular during this time period is 3-day vacation plans, a night out on the town, something to reward yourself because you have been pinching pennies and really watching that budget for so long. You deserve a treat. You deserve something special. And that's the message we try and get across during the recovery time period. In a time of prosperity, luxuries and non-necessities are sold quite a bit. People feel very comfortable with their money and they're willing to spend accordingly. During a time of depression, I'm going to tell you something a little bit different than probably other instructors would. Marketing is only important really in terms of your pricing at this point. We probably won't have a total economic depression in our country again, I hope. We have so many indicators and ways of avoiding it now. But different industries and markets will definitely go through times of depression. Your main responsibility being in the business world is keeping people employed at that point in time. So it's okay to cut your prices if you need to. Cut your prices so people can afford your product, so you can keep people in business. Don't worry about your profit right now. Worry about covering your expenses and meeting payroll. When the depression's over, if you need to raise your prices, the vast majority of your customers will understand and they'll appreciate what you did during that time period. Also in the economic environment, we want to look at the consumer confidence level. Do they feel good about spending the money? Do they feel like their future earnings are going to be solid? If so, they're more likely to spend. Now, the competitive environment is going to vary greatly depending on what industry you're in. You have some industries that are dominated by a few major players. You have others that just have hundreds and thousands of little players in the market. So it's very hard to do. So we want to look at the micro environment, first of all. And what we mean by that is, overall within the economy, who are we competing with? And it kind of depends on what level we look at. If we look at competing for discretionary income, we are saying that any place that they could spend their money is a competitor. So if we're a bowling alley, we're competing against movie theaters and against restaurants and against cable TV, possibly. But anywhere they could spend their money would be a competitor. Most companies don't think that way. What they tend to look at are one of the next two. Product competition, which means they produce products in the same category. For example, Hershey candy bars might consider Pringles to be a product competitor. They're both snack foods. However, if they're concentrating on Mars candy bars or Nestle's candy bars, then they're looking at brand competition, where they're basically making the same product. They're direct substitutes. Also within the competitive environment, we want to look at the macro environment, and that is the industry that we're operating in. And as you probably have come across in other courses, there are 4 main types of environments, industries we're going to briefly look at. Your book talks about them in detail. I'm just going to try and hit a few high points about them. If the industry is considered perfect competition, that means that there are many, many competitors who are making the same product, and there's really no difference in the product. This is usually in the agricultural field, where you can't tell a green bean from one farm from a green bean from another farm. Okay, they're basically the same type of product. The price is set by the market. Okay, each farmer doesn't charge a different price. There's a going rate. Most of the industries that you encounter as a consumer would probably be classified as monopolistic competition. With monopolistic competition, there's a lot of competitors making similar but not identical products. Think about the fast food industry or just about any other industry that you deal with. they come into play. It's pretty easy to enter this. If you want to open your own fast food restaurant, go ahead. You need a small business loan probably. You need to hire a few people, but there's very few restrictions on it. So there are a lot of competitors entering the market, but there's also a lot of failures as well. Oligopolies mean there's an industry with a few main players. You know, think about the oil companies, not the dealers, but the oil companies, car manufacturers. It is very difficult to enter this industry, to become a new competitor in this field because of financial investment and because of customer concerns. Think about if you were buying a new car. Would you want to buy one from a manufacturer you've never heard of before or that just started last year? You know, that's too big of an investment on our part to want to take a risk. So that can be a real issue. The last type of the environment industries there that we're going to look at is a monopoly, and that is when you have one and only one seller of a product in an area. Now, there are laws against monopolies, but there's exceptions. Monopolies are allowed in a limited area as long as they are regulated. Think about your utility companies. You probably don't have a choice of your providers there. That's a limited monopoly. Okay, so let's move on to our other environments. Technological. This one, as you can understand, is the fastest moving, constantly changing. You need to keep on top of this. And a couple things you want to look for. One is something called planned obsolescence. And planned obsolescence does happen quite often. You got to determine as a manufacturer if you feel it's ethical or not. Planned obsolescence is when you manufacture a product knowing it's going to break or be obsolete in a short period of time. Examples are software or women's pantyhose. They are going to run. They're not going to last you a very long time. Do they have technology to make pantyhose that'll last for years? I'm sure they do, but they don't produce it. Okay. Domino effect is when we encourage you to look at a technology and look beyond its obvious use. You know, for example, when microwave ovens first came out, they were looked at for restaurant use and looked at how they might affect the sale of home appliances and the sale of in the business of some restaurants. But microwaves also affected kitchen design, cabinetry, food packaging, grocery stores. It affected a lot of different industries. So the domino effect, we're looking at on down the line, what kind of ripple effect might it have on us? The legal environment, your book gives you a lot of different laws, which are very important. I'm not going to go through and talk about them all. But what I want to go through are the organizations we need to be concerned with. The first is the Food and Drug Administration. This is very important if you produce a product that fits under their jurisdiction, a food or a drug product. If you don't, then you don't have to worry about them. But every organization needs to be concerned with the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. And the FTC oversees almost everything marketing does. That's the governing body that we are most concerned with and need to make sure we understand their requirements. The NARB stands for the National Advertising Review Board. The National Advertising Review Board is a voluntary organization. In other words, they have no jurisdiction. What they look for is any kind of advertising they feel is deceptive or unfair, and they contact the organization to let them know their findings. Most organizations will then fix the issue. They'll address that. It happens often that they make a bad decision on their advertising, not meaning to be deceptive. They honestly just make a mistake. And that's what the NARB is there for. It's kind of a self-policing thing. But if somebody refuses to fix their problem, refuses to address an issue, NARB won't do anything about it, but the FTC would probably step in, and they have the right to issue some punishments. And the final organization I want to look at is the Better Business Bureau. This is an important organization in that consumers really trust the Better Business Bureau. You know, if you're wanting to do business with a company, it's a good idea. Call them, find out if there's complaints, and there's almost always complaints. But what you need to know is how are they handled. You know, is the customer satisfied after a complaint is made? How do they address that issue? And so having the certification from the Better Business Bureau is really a feather in your cap. It's a good thing to be able to promote. The last of the environments that we're going to look at is the sociocultural. And this is a hard one to just sit there and say there's certain trends happening. It changes all the time. But some of the things that we would look at in evaluating the social cultural environment are, first of all, demographics. Demographics are statistics that describe people. So think about if you were filling out a questionnaire and could check off a box to describe yourself. That would be a demographic. Your age, your income, where you live, your ethnic background, your religion, your gender. Okay, all of that is considered a demographic. And when we talk about target markets later on in the course, you'll see we use demographics quite a lot. We also want to look at the values of the society we're doing business with, and especially if we're looking international. Different countries, as I'm sure you know, different cultures have different values, and we have to make sure that we adhere to those values and we don't do anything offensive, that we respect what they have in place. We also are going to be looking at buyer behaviors, why people buy what they do, what they're looking for when they buy a product. For example, you may think that that's pretty evident. They're looking for the lowest price. Well, think about going out to a restaurant to buy a steak dinner. You're buying a T-bone, a 10-ounce T-bone with a baked potato and a salad. And a restaurant advertises it for $2. Are you going in to buy it? Now, I may have one or two of you raising your hand out there, but most of you are saying, no way, that T-bone would taste like shoe leather. You know, are you going to pay $5 to $8? Have a few more of you who'd say you do that. 10 to 15, probably got the majority of you at that point. 16 to 22, probably picked up the rest of you. The fact is we equate price and quality, and so that affects our behaviors, what we're looking for and where we'll shop and what we'll buy. And then the last term up here is subcultures. And I want to kind of caution you on this. When we talk about subcultures in marketing, it may be ethnic basis or international or something like that, but it doesn't have to be. A subculture is any group of people that have shared values and behaviors. So if we look at golfers, that's a subculture. They dress a certain way, they act a certain way, they shop certain places. There's a shared culture there. And that's what we mean by a subculture. Shared values, shared behaviors. Okay, so that kind of gives you a brief overview of the environments. Just a few other issues that we're going to explore in more detail later on, but not today. First of all, we will be talking a lot about ethics. We talked about the social cultural market, maybe looking at demographics. What if we're a cigarette company? It's not ethical, is it, to target demographics, especially if we're targeting under 18. Yet, Camel got in trouble for that using Joe Camel. They said that was an attempt to promote to a younger demographic. So we want to look at some of the ethics concerned using these concepts. We also want to look at our social responsibility. Is it fair? Is it right to go after specific subcultures? Is it fair? Is it right to promote our product during certain economic cycles? Okay, that's some social responsibility issues as well. And then we are going to continue to talk about total quality management, which I introduced earlier in the course. Total quality management means we're continually improving our product. And three main components that I want to bring out about that is, as I just mentioned, it's a continual process. We're constantly trying to increase the quality of our product. We are going to empower our employees, which means they can make judgments that will cause satisfaction for our customers. They can fix problems as they see it arise. And we also are going to use benchmarking, which means we find the competitors that are best in our industry and we use them as our benchmark. We want to get as good, if not better, than they are. Okay, so in summary, the point of doing an environmental scan and analysis is to get an honest assessment of the internal environment and in order to take advantage of the market opportunities which are in the external, so we can be prepared for any market threats. Also, when scanning the external environment, we have to be proactive. In other words, try and take advantage of an opportunity or be prepared for a threat before it actually occurs. And we also need to be reactive. That is it for this segment. Have a great day.